Naimish, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
I think there is some problem with your internet. Are you joined by a hotspot, Wi-Fi, or LAN?
I am joining via.
Yeah, you're breaking in between. You're breaking in between. So if you can join it through Wi-Fi or some. Hello?
We can hear you, Amma.
Yeah, so if somebody, Naimish, if you can join with some good quality internet, probably we'll be able to.
Yeah, let me do something. Let me get back. I'm leaving now. I'll be back in a minute.
Don't worry about it.
No problem, no problem.
Okay, good.
Aman, if you give a call to Shantanu, he has to join.
He messaged me. He'll be here in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
Samay, maybe you can stop the recording and resume when it begins.
Yeah, it's recorded.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening from India. My name is Aman Sanduja. Good to see people joining us today from all across the globe for this interesting discussion on crypto regulations in India. Obviously, it's a hot topic at this point in time for sure. Joining us today for this discussion, we have a very interesting set of panel, stellar blockchain and crypto thought makers from India. We have Shantanu Sharma, founder of InCryptt Labs, who is trying to simplify crypto and blockchain. We have Naimish, Sanghvi, founder of CoinCrunch, a leading India's trusted crypto news source. We have a lawyer joining us from India as well. Specifically, took out the time for us, none other than Varun Sethi. To commence this discussion, I would request the speakers or panelists to introduce about themselves without talking much about their organization. If you can share an instinct about how do you come across crypto and blockchain, that'll be interesting. Over to you, Shantanu.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be on this panel. It's an amazing panel to be in. My journey in cryptocurrency began in 2011 when I first heard about Bitcoin as something I happened to read on an online magazine, but never got a chance to deep dive into it at that point in time. I reconnected with Bitcoin in 2016 again, and immediately fell in love with it again. From there on, I started deep diving into it and brought about my understanding bigger and better. And I've been in this industry for the past about 3 years now. Made a lot of Bitcoins, bought a lot of Bitcoins, other ICOs, and done a lot of investments. Taken a lot of workshops. I must have taken about 100 odd workshops in the past 3 years. And last year, I started off with my own firm, and very recently, I'm sure a lot of you have heard, I started with my own TV talk show called Hard Folk, and this is where I am today. That's what I've been.
Without passing the mic, probably Naimish, you can start, probably share your insights.
All right. Thank you, Samay, for this panel, and I thank everybody else on the panel who's watching the video for joining in. And I'm on the spot with Shantanu and Varun. That's a privilege. So I want to share my journey. I started in September of 2017. I had left my job as a journalist at Network 18, and I had worked at before. So I was meeting some old colleagues from Deloitte, and he told me that working on blockchain research, and I was like, if it has to be something interesting, right? So that's how I got into, started talking to people, and then people started sharing stories how they were paid in Bitcoin and now they are millionaires. Let's not, sugarcoat it. I got in for the money as G, and then since then I got so interested that there is a lack of understanding of the technology. So I started joining myself and also to share the knowledge that I acquire. But yeah, I have not been a great trader, so let's not talk about how much money I make trading. I'm good at content, and I do that well for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Thank you. That's pretty interesting, Naimish. Over to you, Varun.
Thank you. So we got two very interesting people along with me, Shantanu and Naimish. And of course, there's always someone Sanduja always asking pokey questions. So we'll try to answer those questions today in the panel. And some questions that people have directed towards me in the past few months have been something that I've not been able to answer all of them, but I'll try to manage some of the answers today. My journey has actually got started in 2012 as a startup consultant. There were not many people in the legal fraternity who used to call themselves startup consultants. That is one space that I thought has lesser competition. Lawyers who were traditional people not getting into specific startup consulting and fundraisers and all that stuff. So I've been doing that thing even before the Startup Action Plan came to India. As my mother calls me that you did not get a job, hence you call yourself a startup, which to some extent was true as well. In 2015-16, some of my technology-based clients actually started offering me fees in Bitcoins. So I obviously denied it at that time. Since then, I've researched. I'm a research-heavy lawyer, and I also have a team which actually focuses more on research and consulting. So since then, I've written to the government regarding what regulations they are, how they think about this new emerging technology. I'm very excited about newer technologies. So it's blockchain for now, and I think blockchain is big enough to accommodate most part of my remaining life. So I'm into blockchain since 2016, and have been dealing with the government, not just Indian government, governments abroad as well, to bring about regulatory frameworks. I have some published, unpublished papers, which I can share some light on them today. And let's see how the panel pans out.
That's great. We're lucky to have you, Varun. I'm Samay Verma. I'll be co-hosting the webinar today. So let's dive right into the questions. I think Varun will be able to handle the first question I have. There are a lot of misconceptions about the regulations around the statutory status of cryptocurrencies in India. For every time somebody said, hey, cryptocurrencies are illegal in India, if I had a Satoshi, I would have a Bitcoin by now. So first of all, I'd like to ask you all, what do you what we use the term regulations quite often, but what exactly do you mean by regulations, and is that the right term to call what we are going to discuss today, or what the government is trying to bring about? And then the second question would be, what are the myths that you have come across that Indian audience or the audience abroad also has about the Indian regulations, for the lack of a better word, and what are the true answers for that?
Correct. So you talked about what are regulations. So generally there's a misconception about what regulations mean. Regulation does not mean only written law. So written law and regulation, there's a difference between the two. So in Indian context, very interestingly, regulations does not only means the bills and the acts and the ordinances that govern our nation. Regulations, and especially it has been seen in lots of court cases, that regulations are also deriving value from the customs and traditions that are going on in the country. So many a times laws are made based on certain customs, traditions, mannerisms of how one individual interacts with another. So based on that, what happens is that courts take cognizance of these transactions that happen between individuals, develop mechanisms of how the relationship between one individual and the other individual, or one individual, another organization, how that dealing happens. That is what real regulations are. It does not mean regulation. There's a huge misconception. Regulating cryptos means banning cryptos. No, regulation does not mean banning. It just means defining relationships between the two, whether in written form or in oral form as well. So we see that in many cases, we find that one relationship between a group of individuals with another group of individuals may not be in written contracts. Yet the court has taken into cognizance that, okay, these set of people deal with the other set of people, and this relationship is then later on written as a bill, as an act, and that becomes a written regulation. But we surely have oral regulations as well. So talking about myths in cryptos especially, we feel that if government comes up with some regulation, it means banning. No, it does not. Regulation from government perspective primarily means that investors or even people who are part of the crypto ecosystem, so as to speak, need some protection in terms of, say, education, in terms of risks, in terms of being informed that yes, what you're getting into has certain risk element attached to it. Just information by the government is also crypto regulation.
True. So what are some of the myths? The first one is that dealing in crypto is illegal.
So one of the biggest myths is that one, regulations. Second is that as many people ask me, whether dealing, holding, trading in cryptos is illegal. I would say the government, the only formal communication that the government has come up with, which is there on the RBI website since 2013, year after year, they come up with a half a pager notification which says that be aware what you are trading into has risk attached to it. Government has never stated that crypto assets, or earlier what they used to call as virtual currencies, they've never used it on cryptocurrency. So virtual currencies or crypto assets, they're not banned. However, there is higher than normal risk attached to it. So whoever gets there should not expect the government to actually come to the rescue if something goes wrong. So when we talk about crypto regulations in India, what we are expecting is that currently, say for example, if one person deals with another trader, accepts Bitcoin, does not pay the compensation, or accepts money, does not transfer the Bitcoins or any other crypto asset for that matter, he does not have a direct recourse in law. We have seen cases where the person goes to the police station and the police officer does not want to for a FIR for that, because they feel that, okay, this is something which is illegal.
Yeah.
This is where there is lack of education even on part of police officers. So regulations are needed, or misconceptions need to be clear, especially in cases that even if you deal in cryptos, it is transfer of a digital asset from one person to another. There's an offer, there's an acceptance, it is a valid contract. An Indian Contract Act should apply, and the normal recourse in law in case a damage has been done should be available to the person who's a victim.
Very true. They still all these communications. Please go ahead, Naimish.
Samay, I want to add, Varun, I have a question, and a lot of people ask me that. So the question is whether or not I can accept cryptocurrencies for a service or for a product. Like, can I do it as a barter system in India, given the current, there are no formal regulations, formal written law on it, but can we still do it?
So that's an interesting one. The government has clearly stated that crypto assets are not legal tenders, which means technically legal tenders are needed to settle off your liability for the service that you have availed or the product that you've purchased. So in case you purchase a product, there's a liability on your head to clear off the compensation against it. So that the method and manner in which you clear off the compensation is called what is called a legal tender. However, very interestingly, if you deep dive into the law, then you realize that, and using my experience about startup consulting. So say, for example, many a times I'm offered a position, what is called a startup advisor. So I want you to be a part of my advisory board, and we can give you, say, 3% stake in our company. Now, if you analyze this transaction, this is a very interesting transaction. Ideally, I'm offering services to a company, and they, instead of paying me in legal tender, are actually paying me in non-legal tender, which is the shares of the company. This transaction, very interestingly, is actually defined in law. So advisory equity agreements are valid in law. I also drafted, my team drafts it, lots of people draft it. It is valid, people do not question it. Now, if you look at this analysis, and then when you see that can cryptos be used as a non-legal tender to settle the compensatory claims and liabilities against the services. So that can be a very interesting anecdote to explain it to the government if advisory equity is allowed. And government has also accepted. There's a MGD 14 form which is to be filed in case you. So government actually takes in case you got a startup, and in case you're offering equity to an advisor, you've got to file an MGD 14 form. If government accepts that, validates it, the auditor signs it, the government does not raise any questions, well, you can use
Varun, sorry to take it, sorry to interrupt in between and take it from there. I've been recently talking to someone from the government.
Okay.
They gave me a very interesting insight about the cryptos, that currency is issued by a sovereign. And when a
Wow.
currency is issued by a sovereign, I should have a mechanism to touch and feel. And
Absolutely.
when I cannot touch and feel Bitcoin, how should I make it legalized?
Wow.
That is something interesting. I wanted to start.
That's brilliant. I would say that is a very brilliant thought. However, well, the technology, the times have changed. Physical money, we feel that by 2040 roughly, you will have more digital money than physically printed notes. So thanks.
Of course, cash is trash. Of course, cash is trash.
Cash is trash.
So when
Naimish, you being very active in the crypto space and the blockchain. I mean, you are trying your best to establish a community, and
Yes.
you're acting as an evangelist where you're speaking about blockchain and crypto very actively, at least from the Indian community. I would want to understand a very simple and a basic definition from you. How do you literally explain cryptocurrency and the blockchain to someone who is not really into the space, especially from the government or someone from the enterprise? Blockchain is pretty much easier, but explaining Bitcoin, I mean, of course, it takes a lot of efforts. So if you can simplify for the audience and the enterprise and the government, how do you explain Bitcoin to the...
Wow, this is rather interesting. You're asking a lawyer to explain a technical concept, especially when you've got IIT Delhi people in the panel. So
this is what I'm asking Naimish. I'm asking Naimish, which is about.
Oh, he's asking me. Sorry, Varun. I'm going to take this one.
Naimish can start, and of course, I can add my thoughts to it because
I'll come back to you, Varun, for sure. Thank you.
Okay, so Aman, there are two parts to it, right? You asked me how will I explain it to the government, and then how will I explain it to other people, like the people who are not in the government and the people, common citizens like me, you, and my parents, all of those, right? So for the people who are not into the government and people who are common citizens, I just tell them the story of how money can be inflated and how it can be printed at the whim, or rather created, with the bonds and with the government bonds and everything like that. And then I explain to them that Bitcoin has a finite number of tokens or the coins. So, and then you can divide it into as many, up to 8 decimal points. So you have solved the problem of scarcity, but you also have finite number of assets. So then you have in front of you a system that is inflation proof to a lot of extent, and that is why we are looking at Bitcoin. But if I go to the government and say that, okay, this is going to kill your cash or the sovereign currency, they are going to throw me out.
But when I'm usually on the stage, I ask people, have you seen the size of Dairy Milk getting reduced over a period of time?
Yes, I remember that. Yes, you exactly you do that.
That's
right?
the inflation. Then what is the root cause behind this inflation? If it's not cash, then what it is? If
Exactly.
address to this problem, then this is all about this. We have limited supply.
Exactly that.
But
Right?
I sometimes fail to explain it to the government, which is why I wanted to understand from your perspective.
Right.
So one thought here, I can one
Varun.
thought here. When you try and explain to the government, many a times you're not able to explain why. Because so when I talk about cryptos, we have a certain solution which increases efficiency. I'll give you a very specific example. So today, as per the Reserve Bank of India, any Indian citizen can transfer only up to $250,000 in a year under what is called as Liberalized Remittance Scheme, LRS, as per RBI. You go to the bank, in case you want to transfer $250,000, there's a bank process, generally gets done in a couple of days' time. However, any value which is to be transferred above $250,000 has to have a specific approval by the government, by the Reserve Bank. And it normally takes about 21 to 40 days. So imagine in case you need your own funds to be transferred from your own bank account here to a bank account, say in an offshore location, and the value is more than $250,000. You've got to wait for 21 to 40 days time to get an approval, and then the transfer process happens. Now, this inefficiency in the process is only because there's a certain money-backed currency that is there. Bitcoin or any other crypto assets for that matter is actually making these transfers borderless. Now, what is needed is that by making transactions borderless and by improving the efficiency in the process, it does not mean that the government should lose control on how these transactions are to be done. Hence, you surely need regulations. So government cannot deny the fact that regulations are not needed. Regulations are actually more needed, especially when there is this option available of you anonymously transferring value across borders. Why is it? I was very surprised when I filed a right to information application to Reserve Bank. One of the questions was, will cryptos be covered by FEMA laws? The answer was no. It should surely be covered in FEMA laws. FEMA laws have to, someone's got to take an effort to upgrade the FEMA laws to include crypto assets that,
Someone
yes.
needs to take an effort to upgrade a lot of laws, to be very honest, not just FEMA.
No, I mean, that's a long debate on the
That's a long
legal
but
process.
maybe, yes, of course. So that's maybe more lawyers can join in. Maybe I need to hire a bigger team to maybe suggest some regulatory upgrades to the government.
To that, I'd like to ask, do you think there has been a lack of conversation or statements from the governments or from the government of India, or has there been less active conversation from the ecosystem of blockchain? Have we, as the people in blockchain, failed to tell everybody? Okay, yeah, go ahead with it.
I got it. I think there have been lack of, I would say, communications from both ends. If you compare the Indian government, generally whenever new law comes, say for example, we'll take a very popular law, the GST law. So whenever the new law comes, there were invitations by the government to the people who are experts in this field to suggest methodologies, what they want, how things go, what traditional methods are being followed in different states. Based on those inputs, government then actually came up with a white paper. Even on black money, there's a white paper. So I would say that the government can surely come up with an open-ended white paper, open for discussion. We do not want the clear law to be developed in 5 days or 10 days time. It will not happen. However, there can surely be an open white paper explaining that this is what we are looking at, and we are not experts in this field. This is a new law that has come up. Hence, we are expecting experts, maybe across globe, or we've got very good fraternity of experts here in India as well, to suggest methodologies. So there has to be a proactive communication from the fraternity to the government, and the government should also be willing to hear. However, what we've seen is that the government has not invited any public experts, so as to speak, to help them understand this concept and even take one step towards regulation. All the eyes are only on that one case that is going on in the Honorable Supreme Court. However, even if that case is, decided in favor of lifting the crypto bans, that ideally should not mean and does not mean that raising crypto bans, it does not mean that you are still having some methodology for investor protection. The government will still need to put in place an investor protection methodology. So we should not put all our focus on that Honorable Supreme Court case.
Shantanu,
I'm sorry, my bad. Can you hear me, guys?
Absolutely, we can hear you.
I'm sorry.
It's recording. Apologies later. I mean, I think there is a fear in between the government and there is a fear with the enterprise as well, that cryptocurrencies can overshadow banking and the other industries. But I think we have failed to understand that it can act as a catalyst rather than overshadowing the existing technologies. What is the insight, or what is the thought process you have it for the existing people who thinks that crypto and a Bitcoin and the other technologies related to it can actually replace the existing infrastructure rather than acting as a catalyst at the foundation?
See, I mean, even if we talk about the actual replacement of an infrastructure, we have to first try to understand whether people really understand about the system itself. The current infrastructures are very, very simple. They say that, okay, if you go to the bank and you have to get your entire work done through the bank, and that's the most legitimate, that's the only legitimate way. When it comes to the industries per se, the industries are only acknowledging the fact that there is a system called the blockchain. So there has to be an education first that it is not limited only to a blockchain. There is something called a cryptographical or mathematical system which helps you reward somebody who participates in this. There is a big lack of understanding in that manner before you even go understanding what are the aspects of systems here. Yes, cryptocurrencies will bring about a little bit of inhibition in the centralized authority, as Varun had said. And my own previous interaction, Varun, it says that they will have an inhibition However, the knowledge base which is supposed to be with the people around is not enough. Okay, neither with the government nor with us, neither the industry. So replacement is very far off. I think what we need to understand is how can we play around with the entire system right now. Is there any possibility of integrating the blockchain along with the cryptocurrency or crypto asset or crypto reward or an incentivizing system which is predominant in any other blockchain. So if you talk about Bitcoin or Ethereum and all, I mean, even if you call something which came up was Lakshmi coin, okay? I mean, if the government comes up with Lakshmi coin, there should be something which, which incentivizes people to use it. And that's where the entire question boils down. I mean, why should we replace it right now? I mean, it is very far away. Blockchain, for that matter, is very far away. We have not yet on our...
Aman's point rather is that
Hello?
foreign money, right? So even I think that is the
yeah. I'm more confident about blockchain. I'm sure we all have read the manifesto. Our honorable Prime Minister is talking about blockchain, but he failed to mention about the virtual currencies. So probably that's integrated in the world blockchain itself. So that is because I'm actively conversing with the government and trying to understand. That's the fear which is there in the market, that crypto can actually overshadow. Blockchain will succeed, but we're not sure about the organ which is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. I mean, the cryptocurrency holds. A lot of people understand it now. Apart from this speculative element that is there already, cryptocurrencies hold a value. All right, and if somebody owns a Bitcoin today, the public will want to own a Bitcoin today and see the value grow, which is not coming in the normal circumstances. And mostly, that's what I mean. What I believe it is that people are acknowledging blockchain. The government is acknowledging blockchain, but it doesn't understand how we can utilize cryptocurrency within the system.
I'd like to add here that
yes, Amit.
That blockchains will not prosper enough if tokenization and token economics are taken out of it. And token economics has fundamentally they are also crypto assets.
Absolutely.
So holding blockchain and cryptocurrency, two different spheres, is not actually very right. They do meet somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, see, the biggest use cases of blockchain right now is Bitcoin and Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies. So if I have to really look at the overall structure of blockchain, it will never work without what you call the cryptocurrency or a crypto asset. In fact, I'm sure Varun will remember and others will remember in the last year's budget statement which Arun Jaitley made. He was very guarded about cryptocurrency. He says cryptocurrency is not legal tender.
Correct.
And then he used a word called crypto assets. So we will try to limit the use of crypto assets, which is what he said. All right. And that statement was very well crafted because immediately after a month, RBI simply said, we cannot use banks to buy or do or interact with crypto.
Yeah.
So that's.
That was misrepresented so many times by so many media houses. It was just sad.
That's
it was just really sad.
Very true.
I go everywhere, and I talk to people, and they say, "How can you be dealing with Bitcoin?" When I talk about Bitcoin as such, Bitcoin is illegal, which is not the case. I mean, there is no written law anywhere which says that Bitcoin is illegal. Varun will always, will surely, probably.
No, but I have a question. Do we see a day in 2030 that people will ask a question? How can you deal with a bank? Naimish, I would want to.
I'm giving.
I think
10 years. I'm not even giving them. 5 years. I'm not even giving them 10 years.
I give them.
Kids are asking me. My kids are asking me. My younger son. My son is all of 8. And he saw this word Bitcoin and wanted to understand Bitcoin. Super. He's playing around with that word right now with me. So, and he's playing on something, a game, which gives him tokens. All right. He is an avid gamer at 8 years of age. And there are tokens in the game. And he talks about tokens in the game itself. He doesn't know about rupees. So that these people are growing up in tokens. So
I tried my nephew and niece to try and make them understand through Pokemon tokens. That's what they can understand it very well.
Yeah.
So maybe you can give a heads up to your son not to talk about Bitcoin in the school. Probably the teacher gets literally.
The teacher. There will be a parent-teacher meeting with police present over there.
No, but Naimish, very interesting.
No. There is an initiative in my kids' school, both my kids' school, where they want to invite parents to talk about various subjects or come and contribute to the learning. I have applied for a blockchain and crypto, education to kids, and I was asked as to what do you want to talk about? I said I want them to know about money. Nobody teaches them about money. So let's first talk about money, then I'll go into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Of course. Hats off. So, Naimish, I would want to ask you, how do you see a future of Bitcoin cryptocurrencies in India? Let's imagine a day in 2030. What would be your daily activities would look like with the cryptocurrencies in the market?
I think I'm going to take Andreas Antonopoulos' example here, where in one of his conferences he was saying that we are looking at, like 30, 50 years ago, people used to, when they wanted to meet, they would say that let's meet at a certain place at say 12 o'clock in the noon, right? And we were at this hourly time difference. Like we used to talk about 12 o'clock or 12:30. The time was measured in hours. Then we came to a point where we started measuring time in minutes, right? Let's do at 9:15. Let's do at 9:05. Let's do a fireside chat at 9:10. Those things, right? Soon we will go into seconds. And we are looking at seconds of contents, right? There are so many content platforms. The TikTok is popular for 15-second contents, 10-second contents, right? Vine was for 6 seconds. So we are moving slowly into an ecosystem where we are measuring time now in seconds, and soon we might be able to measure it in microseconds. But then with it, we need to also upgrade the monetary system to utilize this second-based time system. We need to be able to make micro payments when we consume content which is micro in size, and that is where cryptocurrency ecosystem will work to make those micro payments.
Awesome, thank you. Shantanu, what are your views on where do you see your son and daughter would be using cryptocurrency probably in 2030? I'll come back to you, Varun.
They're ready to use it now.
No,
all right, all right. So I own Bitcoin. I own some cryptocurrencies, and when I tell them this, and of course they only understand about Paytm, so they probably compare it with Paytm. My elder daughter understands it more than my son does, but I believe for sure they'll start using it next year. All right, or maybe when my daughter starts going to college somewhere else, and I end up paying them in Bitcoin because I don't want to use INR anymore. All right. I think the question arises is my kids don't even understand about what money is, and that's the lacuna I find in the education system. Anyway, I've been talking about it for quite some time. I used to give presentations in colleges and schools, and my topic was Bitcoin money disrupted, and I should talk about how disruptions have happened all across the world in various cases. And Andreas has taken this in many times. He says there has been fire, there has been wheel, there has been industrial revolution, and now we're coming to money disruption. This is money disruption.
Very interesting.
Before we understand money disruption, what is money? People don't understand. Kids don't understand.
Awesome. I think we are getting a little deviated from the core discussion about crypto regulations in India. Yeah. I would ask you to jump in the conversation and take the fundamental course of discussion about how we can actually act as catalysts to make crypto regulated, at least in our own country, which is India.
So taking Shantanu's points as segue, all three of you on the panel hold businesses that are in some way or other working around the crypto sphere or the blockchain sphere. So not having clear regulations in India, how has that affected your business? And what do you think will be the pros if regulations become clearer?
See, I've been an avid miner. I think the first thing that we can probably start doing is mining in India. All right, there are locations where we can do it, and we'll probably have mining as an industry. There is a country which has defined mining as an industry. This is one part. Second part is, of course, there has been a downfall as far as the trying to understand. So I was giving workshops, and people suddenly we had this banking ban, which resulted in a perception that it is a ban on cryptocurrency. And nobody wanted to understand about cryptocurrencies. They wanted to understand about blockchain, and that's what happened. If a regulation comes, which I'm sure the government is thinking about it in some form or the other. All right. If regulations come, we'll see an open market discussion. We'll see open markets, and we'll be able to do a lot of business around cryptocurrency, which is including trading, which is free trading. We'll be able to use and hold bitcoins just like we hold any other digital asset. And of course, if I look at my own business per se, which has been more a workshop and consulting, I could help people tokenize it in many forms.
I would like to twist it for Varun. Sorry, I would like to twist it for Varun, and I would want to understand if the regulation doesn't come for next 5 years, what will be the effect, at least in India, and how will really actually, do not lead but start lagging with the emerging economy, and what will be the actually effect on the businesses and other things what we all are trying to establish in the crypto and blockchain space, if there will be no regulation for next 5 years.
Correct. One, of course, if there are no regulations, two things will happen. Since I work internationally, I might be able to make more money because international structures are far more expensive. So that's one. So setting up a company in India costs 15,000 rupees, roughly 15,000 rupees. Setting up for the same company, a vanilla company in, say, Hong Kong costs maybe 10 times more the cost. So obviously, it increases my income because Indians would then want to set up abroad because that is where the attraction would happen. However, looking at the macro picture, it will have a very sad outlook to it. There's a reason to it. If there are no regulations, means there is no clarity. Whenever a person wants to set up, wants to get into some industry, whenever an industry attracts something, it is primarily because of two reasons. Either there are higher returns or there is clarity of good returns. So if there is no regulation, we are surely seeing a brain drain from India to countries like Japan. So Japan has actually gone ahead to declare crypto assets as legal tender. Why don't we take that example? Now, one country being so proactive to actually declare it as legal tender is a very interesting phenomenon. Why is it that we always look at the West to maybe draft our policies? How about this time we looking at East? How about we looking at what Japan has done? There are talks. This year, financially in 1920, there are talks of bringing down the taxation of crypto dealings from 55% down to 20%. Currently, cryptos are roughly taxed around 55% as a premium tax. How about bringing that thing down? And this thing has been, the bill has been proposed in the Japanese parliament. If that 55% comes down to 20%, that's a game changer then. 20% is the long-term capital gains in India. Now, why will you even think about trading in equity? Then, if the taxation is the same, the only thing that will matter will be the better returns. Now, obviously, if crypto assets give better returns, you'll put all your money there.
May I add something? I'm not sure whether this helps in this entire discussion, but there is a report from FSB, which is the Financial Stability Board of India as a signatory, that all the other Asian countries have some draft law, some regulation around it, except India. And India, being such a large country, should have taken the advantage of cryptocurrency and the knowledge base that we have here. People have been working from India for overseas companies, but we can't set up our own cryptocurrencies companies here in India. ROC does not allow a crypto or a coin related word. They are using blockchain related words. All right.
I think that's integrated. We have to, make ourselves believe that, of course, cryptocurrency is integrated in the world blockchain, which is even mentioned in manifesto and other things. But let's see. Valid points from Shantanu and Varun for sure. And of course, Samay has more questions for Naimish.
Okay, Samay.
I'll come back to you, Naimish, since Varun has already mentioned Japan, and I know he's been a very big fan of Japan, and he's going to mention that.
Me too.
But what has been the philosophy behind Japan accepting the cryptocurrencies as legal tender, and what are by philosophy I mean what has been their motive? Not only Japan. If you could shed more light on other countries like Malta and the regulation that USA is trying to bring right now. We have received circulars from SEC. We have received a news yesterday that they're trying to encourage crypto. So what has been the philosophy? Has it been the same? Has it been different in different countries? And yeah.
Varun, that was the question for you.
Okay, that's for me. I thought that Naimish. Okay, so very interestingly, see, Japan, we're very excited about Japan. There's a reason for it. The Japanese government is, I would say, at least 15 to 20 years ahead of what and how we are thinking. And let's be very fair about it. Japan has already matured. These discussions have already matured in Japan, wherein they talk about these things that yes, crypto is the future for legal tender. They're almost equating it with the Japanese yen. Now, what is the reason for it? They feel that micro payments and minings and all those things, it is not relevant. It's about ease. It's about ease. When you talk to a citizen, does it make a difference that today you've got a 2,000 rupee INR note or a 100 rupee INR note? No. It's about ease of you paying your value against the service of the product that you purchased. Now, with the advent of digital money, now our fathers used to go to bank even for, say, depositing or withdrawing 500 rupees. Then the ATMs came. I never, in the last 10 years or so, I don't think so, I've gone to the bank even once or twice. And most of the people of my age.
Are you sure you have not been to a bank for the last 10 years?
Yes, I think I have
Maybe
not.
just to open his account, maybe. They
No,
want to
not
see
even
your
to,
face.
not even to open the account.
Oh, they must have come to you probably.
No, just to close the account I went there once. Because opening account, they are far more proactive. They come to your office and you can.
Sir, aap bhi ghar aayenge, sir.
No, I remember my father used to take a day off to go to a bank.
Exactly. So my father, from a government job, used to take a day off to withdraw his salary and just to ensure that the salary credit has happened. Now, what has happened today? People who are 5 years, 10 years younger to us, they've never seen those physical notes. What is money for them? It's just a value in a certain online system, whether it is bank, whether it is Paytm, whether it is some other thing. Now, going forward, Japan feels that they need to make life far more easier for their citizen. Hence, it is the restrictions or the limitations of the physical currency notes that is being solved by these crypto assets. Hence, these are the kind of debates that are going on in Japan that, yes, now that we made it a legal tender, what next? They are moving on to making the taxation far more easier for the Japanese citizens. From 55% down to 20%. Well, that's a game changer for Japan.
I have a question to all the panelists here, including Samay and Aman, and this is probably me taking a little bit of your role, Aman. Varun, Japan is a smaller country by area and probably population also compared to India. Is it because of course we have the acceptance from Estonia and in other places? Is it because these countries are very small and it is easier to do an implementation of such a robust, such a big and complex system in a smaller area? So why can't we also pick up a pilot project in India?
Absolutely.
There are places where we can pick up a pilot project, and I think the best way would be the new cities which are coming up in the smart cities that they're talking about on the new highway that they're talking about from Delhi to Bombay. So we can use a pilot project, a small way, and then start implementing it over across other places. That also is not there in the thought process.
No, of course. I mean, valid point, Shantanu. I remember my visit to deep Punjab, and that's where they have a most of connection with Canada. That's where they have said it that we do a remittance at least. We get a remittance at least once in a week.
Absolutely.
We're very much happy to incorporate Bitcoin. And probably through this meetup, we should take an initiative or a pledge to start a pilot project, at least in India, and to have a mainstream adoption. Maybe people can replicate our examples in different cities or different tier 3 towns for sure. And happy to contribute. And of course, Japan, I mean, I'm yet to have a clear understanding from them why they have made it easier. Why can't India look at accepting the similar regulations? And what Varun has said, that capital gain becomes, but My question revolves around one interesting point, which I wanted to hear Naimish insight. That we are
Okay.
talking cryptocurrencies majorly about the investment and money. I would want to understand, isn't it a revolution beyond investment and probably a
Right.
mainstream adoption
Of
to
course.
multiply your assets in the banks, which are already there? So that
Of
is what I
course.
think.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Naimish.
No, of course it's a revolution. I mean, if it wasn't, I don't think that there will be so many people interested into it, right? There will not be people after the 2017 bull run. I don't think that there will be these many people interested if it wasn't a revolution, right? We are looking at we are besides money and all, we are looking at a completely different situation wherein we are looking at tokens, fungible tokens, like unique digital identities, unique digital toys on the platform, right? And those things are going to bring up your bank balance either way. Right now, I mean, we have seen 20 years ago people trading gaming assets with each other on eBay. That
No, of
was for
course.
dollars.
No, of course.
Now,
The moment you meet someone, at least in India, who is in the crypto and blockchain community, the first question is at what price you bought Bitcoin? Of
huh?
course, what
Yeah, of
price
course.
I bought Bitcoin, rather than I would want to ask questions. What year you started learning about Bitcoin? So that's the message I wanted to give it everyone from this meetup. Rather than taking it as an investment of advice, of course, it can act parallelly. And Varun, I'm sure you want to answer Shantanu's question about Japan and how we can take it crypto to a mainstream adoption by at least joining hands together to start a pilot project in India and then become a motivation for the government to accept it as a mainstream adoption. Naimish, you would want to complete your point? Happy to go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to say that this is how I look at cryptocurrencies, right? Or crypto assets rather. It's we have started all. I mean, for me, I started by investing money into it. I also openly talk about my trades, how they go out bad or good, whatever. But at the end of the day, we are still here because we know that eventually it's a long haul, right? It's a long haul game. We all have to learn the technology to actually appreciate the price of it or to understand it. Today, whatever the value of Bitcoin is, unless you know the fundamentals behind it, you would not able to see that value grow or to even equate it to that value. So I think that, as you said, you put it right, that we must start asking people to talk about when they started understanding or learning about Bitcoin rather than at what price they started buying it, because eventually it will not matter. It's the fundamentals that
No, but
matter.
it gives a complex to the other person, someone like me who entered the fourth digit, probably
I mean,
the.
yeah, that's the coveted thing, right?
Shantanu, Shantanu, you have a point. You raised hand. Do you want to add something?
I'm just saying, there is revolution, but the tourists have all left. Okay, in this industry.
True. I'd like to take a question
There
from
were
the
a lot of
audience.
tourists. Sorry. There were a lot of tourists who are basically just pumping in money because they found something growing beyond their means, and today they are not there. But those people who are very seriously looking this as a revolution are all on this panel today.
Guys, this is Nilotpal here. Just a small question to some of the panelists. Aman, nice to meet you again. The thing is, think about this scenario. Yesterday, there was this ICO which came out called Block Cloud. I'm sure that many of you might have invested, might not have invested, I don't know. But it made a 17x in one day returns. Now, we talk about making this whole thing, the revolution, as a currency and kind of bringing it into, integrating it into the central system. And we also want to run pilot projects and everything else. But then, do you really think that right now, where we are, the position that we are standing in, it's really of any worth for the government to even take a look at things which can go 17x in one day, and we call that a currency in any which way possible? It might be a bit of a devil's advocate question, because I am certainly a believer of Bitcoin, certainly a believer of Ethereum, and I am pretty much sure that many of us in this panel, like not in the panel but other guests, might just be newcomers to this field, and they might be listening to us and might be thinking that yes, it should be a currency. But then I do believe that currencies have to be more stable, and something which goes up 17x in one day, it is quite improbable that we can make it a currency right now. At least for the next 6 years, I don't see any way the government can make it a currency. So what's your view on that? And all of you, I'm sure Aman would have his views, Naimish would have his views, and you also, Shantanu.
I can start maybe if you want, if you guys are okay.
No problem.
So I just want to say one thing. Okay, whatever the ICO was, it was not Block Cloud. It's not a currency. They are promoting it as a token, and I'm sure they are promoting it as a token, right? I've not gone into it. But the thing is that there is a difference between how we look at currency and how we look at a token, right? Crypto assets are not just Bitcoin and Bitcoin that can be used as a currency, but it is also, your flight miles, your airline miles, your hotel points. These can also be brought on blockchain and they become your utility tokens. So now the utility token value, it's fluctuating because there are less players into it. There is more competition. They are deriving it in such a way. Okay, they are driving it in such a way that there is hype, and that's why it is selling that much. So I think that somewhere, if there are regulations, we can control how an exchange launches a token, but then the price is still a demand and supply thing, right? If the exchange or the project is going to say that we are only releasing 5% of our tokens on the exchange, there is bound to be 17, 10x, 20x price rise, because then 95% are locked in. So that is the case. I feel about it that way.
So absolutely, Naimish. My answer to that question would be, the winner of a rat race is also a rat race. Ask 90% of the people who have invested in this ICO, how many of them understand this ICO? People have invested because their friends are investing, their peer group is investing, they don't understand about it. We're only talking about the returns from the ICO rather than understanding or doing the analysis about this ICO. Sorry, this money is priceless and valueless for you. Of course, you have made it, but you probably will lose it tomorrow because your friends are investing. So my message would be, whenever you are talking about investment or trying to multiply your money, do your due diligence, do analysis. When you go and buy a car, you try and compare with the other models for sure. So to do a due diligence, at least read a white paper, what they are saying. Do a background checks of the organization. That's where the lawyer comes in. They gives a heads up that this organization is transparent or worth investing or not. But that's my view. I mean, don't do only an investment just to multiply your assets without understanding. 90% of the people who invested in the ICO space, you ask them, what is this ICO all about? They fail to explain and understand what is this concept, what they're bringing in the ecosystem. So my answer would be do a due diligence and proper research before investing in any of the ICOs, ST or IEUs.
So I just want to share some technical insights here about one of the tokens getting 17x return or whatever. So this is very similar to what has happened in the early 90s, mid 90s, and for software companies. And we have seen that the SEBI listing guidelines, because of all these things, had actually changed. If you look at the current Securities Exchange Board of India listing guidelines, it says that no company can do an IPO unless and until it has 3 years of continuous distributable profits to its shareholders. So ideally speaking, no company can do an IPO for at least first 3 years of its existence. So only in the 4th year, and given the fact that you are profitable in the first 3 years and you also distribute the profits to the shareholders, can you do an IPO. So that's how things work. So it is very important that for ICOs and STOs as well, to first of all put in place a regulatory framework similar to this, that you cannot open a company on day 1, do an ICO on day 4, and then just vanish on day 5. Hence, regulatory frameworks are needed to then standardize processes that if you follow these mechanisms, if you are eligible in 1, 2, 3, 4 criteria, only then you are eligible to run an ICO. So maybe you come up with standards, like there are accounting standards, like there are listing regulations. You come up with standards that, okay, is your ICO compliant with so-and-so standard? Yes or no, so that you know that okay, this is a registered or this is a recognized standard compliant ICO, or this is a non-standard compliant ICO. Now, obviously, if you are given an option, you would want to invest in an IPO. You would not want to invest as a scheme which is unregistered. Hence, from ICO perspective also, it is very relevant that government comes up with regulatory frameworks. Till that time that the government is not coming up with regulatory frameworks, we found out a solution. Come up with self-regulating frameworks. Report that, okay, we've been existent for the last, say, 2 years, 6 months. This is what we built. Mention the white paper that this is what we're doing and this is how the token will get unlocked or whatever. And just one last point. Not every ICO that happens is a currency. So you cannot equate all the crypto assets out there to be currencies. Some will be currency, some will have features of currency, some will be pure investments only, and some may or may not even be eligible to be currencies or trading. It will be something else, maybe an ST or something.
Varun, I think you guys answered my question pretty well, all three of you. The thing is, like, which I wanted to highlight is right now we are talking about ICOs, which is a separate aspect altogether, which according to me is more like a security offering. But at the same time, we are also talking about currency on the other hand. So currency and security, now we are talking about two different instruments at the same page. And then we also talk about the fact that central government needs to integrate this as a currency within the existing ecosystem. So my question is specifically on the currency aspect of it. When I look at Bitcoin, even for that matter of fact, we talk about Bitcoin, and many of us expect Bitcoin to maybe go up to 50,000 or 60,000 or whatever the amount is, maybe in the next 5 years, 6 years, whatever the time frame is. Now, if at all in the first place we want to consider Bitcoin as a currency, then that price fluctuation in our mind as well, or even the expectation that we have, I think is completely bizarre, because a currency shouldn't be so much
Absolutely.
volatile in the first place. And second thing, which is also there, is now we talk about stable coins. I think Naimish mentioned about that, stable coins and others. Many are coming out with that. But even the stable coins are backed by USDT, backed by pounds, backed by dollars. Now, when we talk about replacing dollars with Bitcoin, and then we talk about creating a stable coin which is backed by USD, we're eventually going into the vicious cycle of going back to the same currencies which we are using right now. So what exactly is changing with this cryptos in place when we consider crypto as a currency? Couple that with the fact that it's also got its volatility, and suddenly, like, there are a lot of challenges which the government is going to face if anyone holds it and suddenly it goes down by 90%. Like, how can they manage a scenario like that when there are 1.5 billion people and almost 75% of them are not even computer literate, and I guess 80% of them are not even literate about current finance, the way the current financing industry works. So how, according to you guys, is that the government is going to take this huge revolution forward and integrate it with the current accounting system that they have in this existing space? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think, Nilotpal, that's a beautiful question which you have asked. I would let Shantanu to answer this. And adding to your stats, 16% of them are unbanked. So what we can do and how currency can actually benefit this whole economy and go hand in hand to make humanity prosperous for this.
Yeah.
So Nilokpal's question, I think, probably helps me relate into a couple of thought process, which I want to say is that, there's a difference between currency and there's a difference between money. So I think people here are looking, if you look at the current definition of currency has to be medium of exchange, it has to be unit of account, it has to be fungible, it has to be divisible, portable, durable, convertible, all right? And what does Bitcoin give them? Everything here with the currency is, except it is also scarce and has a store of value, all right? And that is what excites people. So apart from it being a currency, there's a big store of value which is attached to this Bitcoin because it is scarce. And that is what excites people as such. The government is aware of the fact that, that we have to be guarded because there are a lot of other things that are, there are a lot of other implications within the governance system, all right? You can, and even if what Nepal said was that, government will think about moving into a currency system or making it a legal tender. I guess that's still far away. The government still, doesn't understand or may need to understand through people like Varun, who is doing a fantastic job in pushing the RTIs through and making it happen in many places, is the fact that there has to be a written law which defines what exactly cryptocurrency status is in India, or whether we can call it cryptocurrency or crypto asset or any other goddamn thing. All right. Whether it becomes a currency, I have a notion that it can only become a currency if we start decoupling it from the fiat. All right. We should be able to say that, okay, my pen is here is 0.001 Satoshi or whatever it is. That is what I believe should happen, but I think that's very far away. Varun will probably clarify more on
that. Just adding a few points here, that was a very nice question. So I feel that the government will not or may not accept Bitcoin as a core currency, so as to speak. I still feel that Bitcoin, what it did was that it triggered off a revolution. However, the best currency which the Indian government might adopt in future may not be existing today. It might be some new thing that comes up, maybe something which is developed by Indians only, which circulates, gets created in India and gets used as equivalent to the Indian national rupee in India. So I don't think so that Bitcoin may well be the answer that the Indian government is looking at if they want to really come up with a real digital currency, so as to speak. Talking about the current crypto assets being pegged as 1-to-1 or whatever ratio to the fiat currency that is there. I would feel that this is a phase that is there. Future currencies may not be pegged against the fiat value. It is only a growing thing. Initially, we had the Bitcoin. People started calling it, oh, it is too volatile because it is not pegged against. It does not have a intrinsic derivative value. So hence, people started pegging it against the, the fiat currency or the dollar or some other value. And then now they are saying, oh, now you're pegging it against the fiat currency, hence fiat currencies are still needed. So I feel that's a growing phase. We've got to learn from countries which have been far more mature in understanding the value of decentralized ecosystems. If you look at the macro picture, again going back to Japan, well, they did not question that, oh, it is the end of the Japanese yen. Japanese yen is existing. Along with that, in case you see, they are open to other values. Why? Because it gives, at the end of it, you still, you mentioned 75%, 60, 70% of the people are still unbanked. Well, the people who are unbanked, or even if people who are banked, they still have issues with understanding what the current money is. So you do not expect masses to understand how monetary system works. What they want at the end of the day is ease of understanding, ease of doing transactions. And the crypto assets that are being developed, they're not perfect, but yes, in future we'll surely have one currency which will have better value additions as compared to the fiat currency restrictions that we have.
So people do understand, Varun. I disagree with your point. People do understand. We talk about demonetization and PNB. We started understanding about how that's
yes, talking about demonetization in political scenario and election days is a scary proposition. But yes, I feel that.
I think there are a couple of questions.
Again, it went down to the demonetization thing. People did not understand demonetization, why it happened, but people still analyzed it from the perspective of ease or the problems that they faced. So people, demonetization was wrong. They did not go into the economics of it. They thought that, okay, they've got to go to make the effort, go to the bank. That is the thing.
At least we have seen cash from bathroom to bedroom to a bank account entering. Yeah, so a couple of questions to conclude from, I think there are a couple of questions left which somebody wanted to ask the panelists, and then we'll take the questions from the audience before wrapping it up. And there are a couple of the highlights which I would want to take the Shantanu's suggestion forward, that if we can do a pilot project in India, let's probably discuss about that when we conclude this.
So my last question would be, what do you think should be included in these regulations that the Supreme Court is trying to bring about and the government is trying to propose? What, as business holders and as crypto enthusiasts, what do you think should be?
I would like to mold this question. If you would have to give a suggestion in that regulatory framework, what will be the individual suggestions from each of you, apart from treating it as an investment source, or apart from looking at how revolutionary it is comparing to the Japan and how they have accepted it? So I'm starting with Shantanu. What would you like to include in that framework so that the government can actually accept it and put it in the point of discussion to take it forward?
Well, this actually is a question which Varun will answer very well. Okay, this is very a lawyer area, lawyer space. But I think the difficulty that I faced was that I was not able to do my own business of cryptocurrency education properly. So I think the first and foremost thing which I want them to start doing is that they have to accept the fact that there is a cryptocurrency, and they should have a framework around that. That okay, we can talk about cryptocurrencies, we can deal in cryptocurrencies, and that will allow me to do better business in whatever I want to do. I would like a change in the company law which says that okay, we can you can start your own businesses with the names which include coins or blockchain or whatever. So that is very important in my case. A couple of thoughts which I can, but I think this is completely a lawyer area actually.
No, I think I want to, before we go to Varun, I want to disagree with Shantanu on this, right? Because,
absolutely.
Right,
that's what democracy is all about.
Exactly. Shantanu, see, the question is really that what is our suggestion going to be, and our suggestion as business people, right? Other people who are trying to work into the ecosystem with a business or whatever, even a job. That is what you suggested, that, the MCA thing and the involvement. I also want to suggest that when I started CoinCrunch, right, we were getting a lot of clients from foreign countries. Right, those people who are doing ICOs or products they are registered in other countries. They wanted to pay in cryptocurrency. Now, I started this panel discussion, and this is coming a full circle. I started the panel discussion by asking Varun if I can accept cryptocurrencies as payments or not, right? And I want to say that if I want something to be included into the regulations is that we can accept cryptocurrencies. Maybe in a way that it's routed through an exchange, a regulated exchange. So everything is on my company's PAN card or on my company's GST. I can actually account for it. I don't mind that. Right? I want to pay the taxes if I'm making money, but I need to be able to accept cryptocurrencies and freely trade it as it's written on the paper. So that is what I would want as a business person.
Absolutely. Before Varun, I would want to add, at least we will get to know how much politicians are withdrawing a salary if they're accepting cryptocurrencies as a mode of payment.
Yes, absolutely.
I would love to, state what Andres Antapanos says about Bitcoin, or what he says, that it's freedom. It gives you the freedom to hold value. It gives the freedom to transfer value without the need of a third party. All right.
Yeah.
That is what Andreas says.
Banking.
Sorry, come again.
Bitcoin lets you and cryptocurrency lets you to be the CEO of banking.
To my own bank. So I'm my own bank as such. Of course, the government will not allow that, but I should have the freedom of choice to be able to use my own money in the manner that I feel apt. If I want to invest in Bitcoin as an asset, if I want to invest, using my fiat, I should be allowed to do that.
But I have a scarcity at the same point in time. If let's take it tomorrow, I start giving my son or daughter cryptocurrency, I can actually see where they have spent it, rather than keeping it anonymity that they can buy.
No. I'm sure your son and daughter will figure out how to use Monero.
That's of course. Varun, what would be the suggestion you would want to add into the?
Okay, so I'll have a more specific suggestion. Being a qualified company secretary, I think we face lots of problems pertaining to the share capital or the shares. I feel that if you look at the Indian ecosystem, there are about 1.9 million companies in India. 95% of those companies are private limited companies. Now, private limited companies primarily means you do not know the shareholders publicly. You've got to make some effort. And these companies are generally undervalued companies. They might be having some maybe land, which is yet to be tokenized. So I feel that government can surely start some pilot project pertaining to, say, an STO for the unutilized assets which are lying in the balance sheet of these 95% of 1.9 million total companies in India, which is private limited companies. So say, for example, if in case you've got some idle asset lying in your balance sheet, which might be some building or land or whatever, in case these crypto assets are able to unlock value for these idle lying assets in your balance sheet, that will be a big game changer. That's a huge number of private companies who do not know how to do it. Why? Because again, to register or list those companies in IPO, you need 3 years of profitable distribution record, which may not happen. So in case you start out with something like this, wherein unlisted private companies unlock value, reach out to bigger set of shareholders, well, this can be a big change.
Oh, that's a very fair point. Unlocking the potential of non-performing assets, and we can tokenize them and start unleashing the value, of course. But I have one concern from the community. You look at it from a perspective, there are more education companies, there are more blockchain companies, but people are reluctant to join hands. It's a decentralized movement. I have done education. Shantanu does education. There are folks in the community who does education. We have seen blockchain companies as well. But people are reluctant to join hands together. One aspect is, of course, the crypto regulation. But people still wanted to establish their verticals rather than taking care of the horizontals and join hands and lay a strong foundation. Maybe a pilot project can be together. People might start getting an idea, let me go to the government and start a pilot project rather than collaborate with the others. So that is maybe with this series of virtual webinars, maybe we can try and establish an emphasis on the collaboration rather than individualist approach and start having the verticals, because the horizontal is more important. And like Shantanu said, the approach towards having a pilot project at least implemented in one of these states or a tier 3 town, we would definitely get in the eyes of the government to have the mainstream adoption of the cryptos. Before we conclude, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I'm sure we are running out of time. Sorry to keep you waiting, the speakers. We have a question from Narendra. I think it has been answered during the session. How do you expect the regulations, if at all, comes over regulations? Like we heard rumors in the recent news that India might regulate with strong riders. Is there a possibility that India bring regulations that only restrict crypto usage only for the institutions benefiting them, like Ambani's to Birla's, not for the individual people and not at all for the retail investors? What is your view on this, Varun? And then maybe Shantanu, would you like to add your?
Well, don't worry about the riders part of it. There's a reason to it. We are a democratic country, and there can be no law which is different for the Ambanis and other people and for us. So in case, even if those regulations come, even our constitution is flexible enough to allow amendments. And in case we are good enough to go forward and justify it to the government. GST Act has been amended more than 25 times since its incorporation. So of course you can think of, even if the regulations come, not very happy with it, good enough to report it to the government, and you live in a democratic system and a very flexible system from a democratic point of view. So riders, no riders, Ambani, you are as good as Ambani. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. That's what the power of decentralization all about. Coming back to Shantanu. Shantanu, there is a question which people are asking about the sandbox that RBI and Niti Aayog probably have mentioned somewhere. Do you have any insight about it?
I'm sorry, I don't have much insight on that, on the regulatory side. I'm so sorry.
I can maybe comment on that. Yeah. So basically what happened was there was a press release on PIB, which is the Press Information Bureau. So the press release was about Niti Aayog conducting a meeting wherein all the industry leaders were invited. A lot of industry leaders were invited, and according to what we have heard, even crypto company executives were also invited over there. So within that meeting, it was decided that there will be a regulatory sandbox created by the government and Niti Aayog together, wherein there will be experimentation on businesses that are related to AI, blockchain, and other emerging technologies. So we can assume that somewhere over there, we might be also able to pilot a cryptocurrency project, like a tokenized blockchain project over there, rather than a private blockchain. But that's just an assumption. The news is that there is going to be a sandbox. Whether or not we will be able to test cryptocurrencies over there, we don't know yet.
Naimish,
just adding one point there. Just adding one point here. One of the questions that I had asked in the April 2018 Right to Information was that whether Sikkim is governed by the Reserve Bank of India.
Yeah.
But one important insight there. Because of the demography and because of how Sikkim became part of India during the early 1970s, the State Bank of Sikkim is not governed by the Reserve Bank of India. Thereby, there is an opportunity to call Sikkim as the regulatory sandbox. You can use that thing, maybe find some locals. There's a technical term in Sikkim called as Sikkim subject. So people who are who are having ownership and who do Sikkim subject are the ones who get tax exemptions. They don't have to pay any taxes on the earnings that they earn in Sikkim. So Sikkim can become a very good right jurisdiction to apply, try out, maybe a one-to-one peg. You put some value in Sikkim Bank, find some Sikkim
absolutely
subject people, and you're good enough to experiment on these crypto things in Sikkim.
We tried that. Okay, so when the regulation came out, we started looking out for what is happening with Bank of Sikkim, and we realized, State Bank of Sikkim, that they are still using Yes Bank to make the transactions for them. So that is where the catch-22 comes, right? Because they're using Yes Bank, and Yes Bank is under RBI. That's
Correct. So they're using Yes Bank because the State Bank of Sikkim is totally offline. You cannot find.
That's true. But Varun, one last question to conclude. Can we see a sunshine probably after the elections? Do you have an insight about it?
Oh, well, I think why not sunshine? Bright sunshine. I'm very excited about this thing. Why? Because elections, no elections, post-election, pre-election does not make a difference. This technology is coming, and it's coming fast. Whether India adopts it, does not adopt it, whether you see brain drain, whether it happens in India, this is surely coming. We're very, very confident about it. See, the thing that I want is that I get lots of references, I get lots of work from abroad. However, the exciting part would be, can I get that same thing, the same quality work done in India?
Would you charge the same fees for Indians? Like,
does it mean
We'll charge lower. We'll charge lower in India. So
Yeah. I think it will probably help us scale up our own value as far as business people is concerned when we have these kind of cryptocurrencies or any regulatory
and
system.
we've got that framework in place. We are amongst the second best service providers, and we should be good enough to be able to contribute towards this blockchain revolution. So
Absolutely.
we've got the basics right. Just that, I think, and don't wait for regulations. I'm a big fan of self-governing regulations. Go forward, do it.
so? Do you
Just be within the legal parameters and then report it to the government. What's wrong in that?
So Varun has a message for upcoming lawyers to become to ride this billion-dollar wave, so that you become the catalyst in the industry to regulate it actually and provide a framework to government. I think Samay has a question before we conclude.
I'm so sorry, but there's a very enthusiastic miner who has a question for Shantanu. Shantanu, he says that I want to start a hybrid mine plant in India, and he wants to know the regulations and policies he should understand and follow.
Right now, there are no policies as such. I mean, if you want to set up somewhere, you probably can set it up. The question is, if you're looking at mining per se, mining is an expensive proposition right now. If you look at your machines that you want to buy, it depends on what you want to mine. So you want to mine Ethereum, you can probably do with a GPU, right? But if you want to mine Bitcoin, you need an ASIC. All right. Setting up an ASIC is expensive proposition. You may get an ASIC cheap, but electricity costs. Imagine running running an AC, a 2-ton AC for 24 hours in Delhi. All right, the costs are enormous, and you end up losing more than gaining it. So one, of course, you're looking at the weather, whether you can do it in where you can do it, whether there's internet there, whether there's electricity there. The only place I believe can really happen well is probably Kashmir. Where the weather is conducive, electricity rates are very less. All right, but there are more other political issues, and I don't want to say on this panel, but I've heard of people who are doing it very discreetly. Openly, I mean, you can do it. I mean, you can download your entire the entire chain of any of the coins, and you can start mining it out of a laptop. All right, so there is no regulation per se. It's a system of tokenization which you can utilize. Varun, if you can highlight if there is any regulation for this or not. It's not an industry for sure, so you can't run it as an industry.
Well, I have some negative points regarding it. I know cases where the police have actually raided because
I know too.
Because of the higher electricity thing. There's also error on part of miners as well. What they do is that they take residential electricity meters, and then the cost is actually higher than the commercial meters. So you've got to understand. See, again, it boils down to education only. 5 years down the line, we'll realize that we missed out on the mining wave. We could have used, if not Kashmir, then Uttarakhand as a place to do mining. But in Uttarakhand itself, the government has actually, the police have actually raided some premises. So, of course, that's a highly debatable topic, I would say. But people have been doing it abroad. There have been companies claiming it to do abroad. China came up recently with a negative thing regarding banning mining. So it's highly debatable, I would say. We can go either ways. If not mining, we are good enough to be a service providers in blockchain. So it's a huge industry. There are lots of verticals which can be thought of.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm working with certain companies overseas who basically want to start up a mining ecosystem in their own country. So they are they're games. I know of countries.
Canada is starting.
Armenia is starting. I'm working very closely with an Armenian company which says that you can come establish your mining farms here. We're going to give you cheap electricity. We're going to give you 25-year moratorium on income tax or VAT, which is fantastic. So if you want to do mining and you want to make it your own business, you're most welcome to start anywhere. But yes, you have to look at the economics and all that.
I always give an advice to people: invest in your education first, rather than investing in mining. Once you understand this concept, you can do an efficient mining. Last question I've got from some traders, that what is the future of cryptocurrency exchanges in India? That's specifically for Naimish. And the follow-up question is, how do you actually decide the value and a price of a Bitcoin? Because I don't have a mechanism to look into it. So Naimish, if you can throw some light on it, it'll be
yeah. I think the future of exchanges in India is most likely the ones that are not able to sustain will close down. I think not a lot of exchanges are making money right now in the bear market. They are self-regulated. They are good maybe in the regulations, but they are trying to walk that path wherein the government could be alerted that this is not going right. Exchanges going, exchange is doing it without KYC or something like that. So I think that eventually if the market, I don't really see it as a regulatory problem. I see it as a market problem.
Right.
When the market goes down, the exchanges suffer, and which is a fair thing to assume, because if people are not going to trade, they are not going to make money. So if the markets go up, the exchanges will survive, and then they will have to still self-regulate until the government brings up regulation. So it depends on the market. That's my assumption. It depends on the market. The second part of the question was about how do we determine a value of a Bitcoin, right? A value of any cryptocurrency. I think it's undeterminable. I mean, we can't say that it has an intrinsic value. We have to actually depend on how the public is going to, how the supply and demand works. What am I as a investor willing to pay for it? And if I'm willing to pay $7,000 for it, the Bitcoin value for me is $7,000. If nobody is going to buy it for sell it for 7,000 and they want to sell it for 10,000, then for them the Bitcoin value has to be 10,000. So that is how I think all of the market dynamics work. But this is how I see cryptocurrencies or even other markets.
There was a very interesting article you guys submitted about WazirX a few days ago.
Yeah.
Could you explain that to the audience?
So what happened with WazirX was that we observed that when Binance went onto a maintenance, the order books on WazirX went silent, like went really bad. They used to have a lot of volume and then they were all dead. So upon talking to some industry people, even with folks from WazirX, and we realized that what people are doing, or what even Big BNS is trying to do right now, is the traders, and this is a risky thing, the traders, what they are doing is they are using the APIs, they're using the exchange APIs to arbitrage between Binances of the world and the Indian exchanges in the USDT market. So as soon as there's a difference, the APIs kick in and they make the trades. So they have this order set up to arbitrage between them. So as soon as Binance goes down, the arbitrage is killed. So they also take off their orders. That is one of the assumptions. But I don't know regulatory wise how wise it is to do that for Indian, for Indian traders. If they get caught, what are the punishments going to be like? I don't know.
So just adding one point there. You talked about exchanges not doing well because the market is down. So we've seen this thing. It is not a phenomena that happens only in crypto. So we've seen this thing in other markets as well. There are 21 exchanges in India. People know about only two: the NSE and the BSE. The Delhi Stock Exchange has been is defunct since a very, very long time. So it's a phenomena that is there in the other markets as well. However, those other markets or other people do not call it a wrong or a scam or something. It's important that the crypto also has more exchanges. It throws open better competition. And maybe out of that, you will get the top two, just like we've got the BSE and the NSE.
Eventually, yes.
It has been a wonderful panel. I would like to conclude this. I think the three highlights from this panel discussion are the awareness about cryptocurrency and a blockchain, collaboration among the existing system, and probably take an initiative towards a pilot project. And cryptocurrencies beyond investment. That's a message which I wanted to give it to every other person who is listening or probably will listen to this meetup when it will be uploaded on the virtual the social media platform. Thank you very much. It has been a very interesting discussion. Obviously, Samay and I have been literally thrilled about it. Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone, whosoever could attend this virtual panel. We'll be keep posting you about the other series as well. Thank you and have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for coming.